Hey everybody, welcome to Garden Time with Belle. Today's video is all about right plant, right place. Picking your plants and considering where to put them in the landscape or in pots around your property where they're going to have the best chance at performing the way you want them to. So there are three top things that I want to hold in mind when I'm deciding where to put my plants. Today, I want to really talk about considerations for perennials. And as some of you know, perennials are those plants that grow and come back year after year after year. And it's super important to know your gardening zone. So I think I've shared before with you all how to look that up. You go at the USDA, I think, has a website. I'll put it in the link below where you can pop in your zip code and it will let you know what your garden zone is. And that is important for perennials because there are certain perennials that will not survive extreme colds. Some perennials do better and come back where it's very warm year round. I'm in a zone 6AB here in central Missouri, so I'm looking for perennials that really are rated down to at least a 5, maybe even a 4. I know that those perennials will really last through sometimes can be harsh winters where I live. So today it's all about thinking about plant placement. In a little bit, we are going to head out to the garden and I'm going to show you where I had to make some adjustments in terms of right plant, right place. And I'll explain why I had to shift some plants around, some of my perennials. And that gave me the opportunity because I moved some plants out of a spot. I've got an open spot just ready to receive one of my new purchases yesterday. I went out and I scored on a Buddleia butterfly bush, for those of you who are familiar with that plant, the Miss Molly variety, a beautiful, strong, almost magenta pink flower that's going to hopefully do great here. I've grown other Buddleias, so I'm fairly certain this one's going to perform well in my space. So there are three things that I like to consider when I'm deciding on where to place my perennials and even some of my annuals. So I wanted to share that with you, sort of my method and things I think through before I put something in the ground. Number one, light requirements. Know your plant, read the tags, do your research, and understand what type of light does it need. Does it need full sun, which means 6 to 8 hours of sun a day? Does it need part sun, shade, part shade? Look at the plant tags. And if you happen to get a plant without a tag, golly, use Google. Oh my goodness. It is so easy now as gardeners to get information at your fingertips. When I started gardening many years ago, there was no internet. There was no picking up my phone and pointing it at a plant for a plant ID. And then, there was no going out in my garden with my cell phone and pulling it up immediately and searching for how to care for this plant. What are the light requirements for this plant? I was getting my information for wonderful experienced gardeners or from books at the library. So use the internet for information about light requirements for plants. Number two, watering needs. Does your plant like regular soil? Does it like soil on the dry side, soil on the wet side, or is it a super hardy, flexible plant that does well in all different kinds of water conditions? That would be something you would really want to think about in terms of placement and where you're going to put that in your property. I've got lots of garden beds all around my property and raised bed gardens that I use, and all of them are a little bit different in terms of how well they hold moisture, how well they drain, if they don't drain. And so I try to consider that when possible. But the other workaround to that is search for perennials that can take multiple conditions. I really want workhorses in the garden. I don't want plants that are too fussy, that are too particular. For me, I just would rather go with some research and finding which ones are really flexible and can handle wet, dry, medium conditions. That really is the way for me to approach a lot of that. And then lastly, Think about their growth habit. Of course, you want to read the label. Of course, you can go online and read about your particular plant and find out in general how tall and wide at its maximum growth will it get. And again, remember those tags that you get in the garden center on your plants are just an estimate. Lots of variables can impact how truly tall and wide a plant gets, but they're a really good guideline when you're thinking about spacing or plant combinations. It's always something worth considering. So in just a minute, we're going to go around the south side of my house and look at the space where I have had to relocate some of my perennials because it was a growth habit issue that I did not anticipate. And so I'll explain more about why I had to move some of my Russian sage because it got covered up and crowded out by some beautiful Baptisia or false indigo that I planted last season. And when it came back this year, those gorgeous plants just got enormous. And I wasn't quite expecting that. And so the few Russian sages I had there, well, I'll put a picture up on the screen for you to look at now. I took a couple of days ago. The Russian sage, you can barely see it. And that's the problem. You could barely see it. It is getting crowded out by that Baptisia. So I forgot to set up the camera the other day when I popped those Russian sage out of their original locations where they were being crowded out and popped them into a new location. And I'll show you that when we get around the side of the house. So really that is what today is all about. It's about don't be afraid to relocate plants when for whatever reason they are not performing like they should. Don't be afraid. As a new gardener, I think I was freaked out by the notion of digging up this perennial, this plant that was sort of be semi-permanent in my garden. I was afraid that if I dug it up and moved it to a new location, I would disturb the roots, it would die on me, it wouldn't survive. And I got brave about 5 or 6 years ago, and it's like, I give you a 1 season perennial, and if you're not performing like you should perform, you're getting moved to a new location. And so that's what today is all about. Refocusing, relocating plants when needed, but things to consider. Right plant in the right location equals plant success. So I've moved around to the south side of the house to the actual little garden bed here that I'm going to be talking about today and planting up that Miss Molly Buddleia. So I'm going to turn the camera around and show you what I had to pull out and relocate because in terms of right plant, right place, I didn't consider the growth habit, and some of my larger perennials overtook some of my smaller ones. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So in this spot, you're going to see that I've got 4 peonies and they are done blooming for the season. It is towards the end of May and I trimmed them up just the other day, took off all the spent blooms. If you didn't get a chance to see that video, check it out. It's a video that I shared just about how I tackle different garden tasks. And for me, it's just my way of keeping on top of things. And yesterday was Tuesday, so I did some trimming of those peonies. Well, as many of you know, once peonies are done blooming, they don't do anything else for the rest of the year, and so they just sit here. So let me show you which plants I relocated. And actually I did this just, yesterday or the day before, and didn't get it on film. But anyhow, so here is a Russian sage that I popped in the ground here. Here is the other Russian sage. And so this plant, in terms of knowing its growth habit, it will get about 4 feet tall. So it'll fill in this space nicely. and it'll be nice because this Russian sage has beautiful silvery blue flowers, and it'll get about 3 to 4 feet tall, so it will fill in that area really well. But let me show you where they were before I evicted them and relocated them. Let me see if I can get in here. So you see that hole? Well, if you saw the picture I put on the screen a minute ago, there was one Russian sage there, and there was one Russian sage there, and I had no clue that this gorgeous bank of Baptisia would get this enormous. And so when they grew up, those poor little Russian sage, forget it. Russian sage loves sun, needs space, and I didn't plan very well because I honestly had never grown Baptisia or false indigo before, and I'm delighted with how these beauties are doing. Of course, they're done blooming as well. I showed you what they look like, oh gosh, not even a month ago. They were glorious. I might see if I can find that picture again and put it up on the screen. They are my new favorite perennial. False Indigo Baptisia. These are proven winner brands, the Sparkling Sapphire and Lemon Meringue. Just gorgeous. So pull those Russian sage out to give them more space, more air, and more sun, and pop them in here and in here. So why did I have this space? Was there something there? Yes, there was. There were actually plants here, here, and here that again were little tiny. So instead of being too big for the space, they were really way too small. And that was the Catmint Nepeta. Let me show you where I pulled those out and relocated those to. So here we are on the east side of the house. Gets about 6 hours of morning sun. Of course, the things in this front part of the bed get even more sun because it's further away from the house. But here is where I relocated the Nepeta. Let me get my shadow out of the frame so you can see. So I had this little swoop area down from some of my limelight or little lime punch hydrangeas, and I had nothing here before I have another Buddleia and spiderwort, and I had this empty space, and I'm like, all right, let's pop the Nepeta in here and see how they do. This is far out from the house, so it gets a lot of sun, and that's what Nepeta like. So yeah, it's pretty easy in my property. Find a hole and fill it with a plant. So before I get Miss Molly in the ground, this is actually where she's going to go, and you can see there's a plant there, and this is a coneflower that was also tucked up under the Baptisia. I just popped it there temporarily. I'm going to take this out today and put the Miss Molly in this spot, and then I'll find a new home for that coneflower. You know, I don't have very good luck with coneflower. I don't know why. I think maybe they like things on the drier side, and I have heavy clay soil, even though I amend it with compost and lots of organic matter, but you know, it's pretty heavy clay, and they don't seem to love it so much. However, if we pan over here, if you've not seen my 2-acre pollinator habitat, check out some of my other videos. It is just incredible, and it will be loaded with rudbeckia and different types of native coneflower that do just perfectly fine up there because that doesn't get watered except by Mother Nature, and they like it on the drier side. So I think that's my problem. I think the coneflower I had up by the house, I think it's a little too moist for coneflower. But anyhow, so I'm going to pop this out, and then I'm going to show you Miss Molly and get her in the ground. Popping this Miss Molly Buddleia in the ground is going to be a pretty easy project. Just want to share with you what I'm going to need for the job. Of course, I've got my beautiful Miss Molly. I might need a shovel, although I doubt it because I dug up that space the other day. And I'm going to amend my clay soil with some compost. And I was at my garden center the other day, and I've never seen the Missouri Botanical Garden compost. So my fellow Missouri gardeners out there, if you've used this compost, let me know what you think about it. It's going to be my first time. I usually use the Land and Sea by Espoma, but I ran out. So yesterday I picked this up when I picked up Miss Molly. So I'm sure that that will be great for the plant. And as always, my little tub there of Biotone starter fertilizer. Starter fertilizer is essential for me in my garden. Anything I plant, just at the planting time, it goes in the hole and it really stimulates root growth. And without healthy, happy, vigorous roots, your plant will not perform. So that's what I need. That's all. Let me get to putting Miss Molly in her new spot. So following those principles for right plant, right place, we need to think again about light requirements, water requirements, and growth habit of our perennials before we decide where they're going to go. So use those tags. And of course, Proven Winners does an incredible job providing us information about their plants and what they need. So let's look at light. Light requirement is 6+ hours of sun. Super easy for this plant in this spot. This is south facing. It gets sun all day until probably, I would say, the sun sets over there. So it'll be in sun till from sunrise until probably, I don't know, I would say right now about 5 in the afternoon, early evening. So plenty of light it needs, and it'll get it here. Water requirements, it can take, average amount of water. And we have drip irrigation under here, so it'll get the same amount of water that my false indigo does and the rest of the perennials in this bed. So I think that's not going to be an issue. And then of course, the size, right? Thinking about the growth habit. According to this, it says it'll grow 4 to 5 feet tall and wide. So this is about 4 feet wide, and I think, what is that? I'm 5'6", so if it really got to 5 feet tall, maybe it would get this tall from the ground, somewhere around there. So I think it's going to be okay. I think this is the right spot for the right plant. Okay, time to get it in the ground. So here's Miss Molly all tucked into the south facing border, and I hope I got it right this time. I think I followed the principles of right plant and right place. So yeah, just wanted to recap what you got to see me do as I was putting Miss Molly in the ground, that beautiful Buddleia butterfly bush. What you got to see me do is, of course, move the mulch out of the way, remove that coneflower, which will find a new home soon. And then what I discovered, in this particular bed, there is some heavy-duty landscaping fabric. That was placed several years ago when we had just a few shrubs in that area that we didn't expect to add to or expand. And it's not the greatest thing to use, but I appreciate those of you who want to use it. You do you, but it makes it difficult for a lot of us in gardening to have to work around this. So I cut out a little bit of this landscape fabric so I would have plenty of space to dig a hole, because that Miss Molly came in a 1-gallon pot, and so I needed to provide a lot of space. So you got to see me add some of that Missouri Botanical Garden compost. First time I've ever used that, so we'll see how Miss Molly likes that organic matter. So I worked that into the native soil, certainly put Biotone starter fertilizer in the hole, popped Miss Molly in, buried her about the same level that she was in the container, and backfilled everything nicely, and then of course watered her in. So I'll keep you posted on how she does throughout the season. I'm expecting great things because proven winter plants are incredible. They have really been developed with so much thought and care and bred for having some of the best qualities for survival, for beauty, for growth, for habit. And I've just had really good luck with them. But of course, I use all kinds of plants, not just that. And as you've seen in many of my prior videos, I have been trying to grow almost everything from seed this year. So today was super fun for me to get to take a nearly mature plant and plop it in the ground. That was really fun because I've not been doing a lot of that this year. I've been really putting my seedlings in the ground and hoping that they'll develop. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed thinking about right plant, right place, and also not to be concerned if you need to move stuff and shift. You know, I had to move my Russian sage that was getting gobbled up. I had to move my little Catmint Nepeta because it was too small for the space. Don't be afraid. If it's not working, if it's not the right plant for the right place, go ahead and move it and try again. If you enjoyed today's video, please like and subscribe so that I can continue to bring you content and you can see some more of my adventures. Thanks everybody, and as always, happy gardening.